Hi friends, I am Payal Dutta. Welcome to my channel. If you are new to my channel, ding dong, please subscribe. So today we will be studying the poem When Great Trees Fall by Maya Angelou. Now before we begin this poem, you must know why this poem was written. This poem was written by Maya Angelou on the death of James Baldwin. James Baldwin was a writer and he died of stomach cancer. So on his funeral, like a friend, Maya Angelou, she recited this poem. And later, this poem was published in a collection called I Shall Not Be Moved. So now let us read the poem. The first two stanzas, they are metaphorical. In the first two stanzas, the speaker uses the metaphor of a tree to indicate great men. She equates the falling of huge trees to the death of great men. So she says, when great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. So the speaker, she points out the impact of falling trees on the various forms of nature. She says that the rocks on distant hills, distant means remote, the rocks located on isolated hills, in faraway hills, they shudder, they tremble, they shake. Because the roots are no longer there to hold them together, what happens? Their bondings become loose and they tremble, they shake. Lions hunker down in tall grass. Hunker down means they take refuge. They find some sort of a protection in tall grasses. Because you see, their shelter is lost. So these lions, they hide themselves in the tall grasses when the huge trees, the great trees, they fall. And even elephants lumber after safety. Lumber means to drag. So the elephants, they drag themselves to safety, towards their well-being. Now note this phrase, even elephants. Both these words begin with the letter E and they lie side by side. And so this is an example of an alliteration. So in the first stanza, we see that the falling of trees has an impact on strong rocks, it has an impact on the fearless proud lions, and even the enormous huge elephants. But as we come to the second stanza, things are a bit different. But you see, the second stanza, it too begins with the same phrase as the first stanza. How does it begin? When great trees fall. So this is an example of an anaphora. What is an anaphora? When stanzas or lines, they begin with the same words or phrase. So here the first stanza and the second stanza both begins with the phrase when great trees fall. Therefore, this is an example of an anaphora. Now in the first stanza, the speaker had mentioned the effect of the falling of trees on strong, fearless and enormous things. In the second stanza, she mentions the influence of these fallen trees on small things. She says, when great trees fall in forests, small things reconcile into silence. Reconcile means they shrink, they retreat, they draw back into silence, into stillness, into quietness. They become mute. Their senses eroded beyond fear. Eroded means they are ruined, they are destroyed, degenerated. So when great trees fall, the senses of small things, they are disintegrated with fear. Beyond fear means that is totally out of fright, that is completely due to fear. So, here in the first two stanzas, Maya Angelou is metaphorically trying to show that when great men die, the strong, fearless, and big men, they are affected. Not only are these enormous ones affected, but also the small things, the inferior ones, the subordinate ones, they are affected. So you can also say that these small things, they refer to children. So when great men die, these adults, the adult world, they try to secure themselves. They try to secure safety. And what happens to the children? The children are engulfed with silence. Their senses are lost in fear because you see their guide is gone. So their ability to think, that is hindered, that is hampered. So from the third stanza onwards, Maya Angelou, she doesn't use the metaphor of a tree anymore. But now she directly speaks about what happens when great men die. What does she say? When great souls die. Here she's talking about the writer James Baldwin. So when great men like James Baldwin dies, what happens? The air around becomes light. The air becomes delicate. It becomes gentle. Rare, sterile. Rare means scarce, as if there is a shortage of air. It becomes insufficient. So the air, it is thin, it is scanty and sterile. Sterile means it is barren, it becomes useless, it is unproductive, it becomes futile. And because of this thin, insufficient, worthless air, what happens to us? What happens to the real world? We breathe briefly. We breathe for a short time. Now note here these words, air around, breathe briefly. All these are examples of alliteration. So the insufficiency of air, this seems to choke us. It seems to limit our breath. Our eyes briefly. So for a moment our eyes, they see with a hurtful clarity. There is a blurriness. Clarity means the quality to see. So when great men die, our eyes, they are filled with tears. We cannot see clearly. Our clarity is blurred. Moreover, when great men die, the guide is gone. So we are unable to see our own future. We are hurt. We are helpless. But even in that situation, what happens? Our memory suddenly sharpened. So suddenly sharpened is again an alliteration. So even in such painful situations, our memories become better. They sharpen up, they enhance, they become more refined. And this refined memory examines, it inspects, it surveys. And what does it survey? Gnaws on kind words unsaid. Gnaws means it torments, it bothers. So our memories, they burden us. They bother us by reminding us that there was some kind of words, some loving words, some warm words that have remained untold, that have remained unspoken. And those words cannot be communicated anymore. Thus, we are bothered. We are burdened. There is a sense of anxiety in us. We remember the unsaid words. We remember the promised works never taken. That is the swears, the vows that have remained incomplete and will never be accomplished. Then the speaker says that when great souls die and our reality means the reality of the living world, the real world, that was bound to them, that was attached to the world of these great men, that was merged with their world, which coexisted with the world of these great men, that takes leave of us. That coexistence, it stops, it terminates, it ends. The great men, they take their leaves. Their death has separated us. And because of this separation, what happens to our souls? Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, that is, our souls that were once counting on their assistance, that was relying on these great men for their growth and development, now shrink. They reconcile. So just like we read in the second stanza, how small things reconcile into silence, our soul shrinks and reconciles too. And now, shrink, wizened. Wizened also means to shrink, to dry and shrink down. And how does this loss of great men affect our mind? Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance. Radiance means illumination. So our imaginations that were formed, that were shaped and informed, that is, that was made more knowledgeable by their radiance, their light, their illumination, that mind has fallen. They fall away. Fall away means they withdraw. So the imaginations, the ability to think, that seems to decline. It seems to disappear. We are not so much maddened. Much maddened is again an alliteration. And we here refers to the living world. So the living world is not much annoyed, not much infuriated, because they are reduced, they are minimized, they are diminished to the unutterable, that is the unspeakable, ignorance of dark, cold caves. Here the speaker refers to her feeling of pain as cold caves. She says that her feelings of hopelessness, that was suppressed by her anger. So, her feelings of misery is so strong that it cannot be uttered. It is dark and cold. It is depressing and cheerless. It is like the cold caves, like unemotional graves, you see. And then we come to the final stanza. In the final stanza, there is a change in the speaker's outlook. She is no longer regretting about the loss, but she says that when great souls die after a period, that is, with the passage of time, what happens? Peace blooms. So gradually, what happens to all these despair? What happens to the pain? It erodes, it fades, and peace, harmony, calmness, they bloom, they blossom, they flourish. And this progress takes place very slowly. Slowly it takes place. It takes place steadily. It occurs in a very slow pace, taking its own time and always irregularly. So in every situation, peace will return without fail, but it is very irregular. It is uneven. It is non-uniform. And as these broken, irregular pieces of peace, they revive in our lives, what happens? The space is filled with a kind of soothing electric vibration. So the speaker here is talking about the process of healing. Spaces refer to the emotional spaces, the mental gaps in our minds that were caused due to the loss. So those spaces, those gaps, they are being filled. Filled with what? Filled with a kind of electric vibration, a kind of positive vibe that is soothing, that is relaxing, something very calm and peaceful. So our peace returns slowly and non-uniformly to fill these empty spaces, these empty emotional spaces in our minds. And after this huge loss, there is a revival of our senses restored. So the senses that had once reconciled into silence, they are again enlivened. But this time, the senses are never to be the same. So, the impact of the loss is so intense that it reshapes our senses completely. It reconstructs us. It remolds us. It improves us. So, these senses, they alter all our ways of living. So all our senses, they are altered by this loss, and they whisper to us, they silently remind us. What do they remind us? They existed. That is, these great men, they existed. The repetition here shows that their existence was quite impactful. So after mourning about their loss, here the speaker is finally ending with a message of positivity, of hope. The speaker is saying that we can be and be better. That is, we can continue to exist and make our existence better. We can make our existence more fruitful. And why? For they existed. Because great men existed in our lives. So here, Maya Angelou, in her funeral speech for James Baldwin, she is actually telling him that she would also heal from the loss of losing him forever. The healing might be slow, but time would ensure that peace blooms. And she ends the speech telling her departed friend that she too would become a better person because he existed in her life. So in this poem, the speaker is telling us that we all have someone in our lives, someone whom we loved a lot and we have lost them forever. There was someone who formed and informed us, someone on whom we were dependent for everything. Their death news, that has come to us like a shock, and we are maddened, we are shattered by the news. But as we know that time is a best healer, time helps to pacify us. It helps to calm us down. And ultimately, we construct a better version of ourselves. Why? Because these great people, they had an impact on our lives. We are forever indebted to them. While they were alive, they had an impact on our souls, our mind. And even after their death, their impact, it continues. So with this, I come to the end of today's discussion. If you think that you understood this poem, then you can definitely participate in the quiz, whose link is given in the description below. And if you have any queries regarding this poem, feel free to ask me in the comments below. I will definitely answer. And there is also a WhatsApp group link that you can join if you wish. And there you can send me all your queries. I will answer them to you. So till then, ta-ta!